This is Pete Moore on Halo Talks NYC. I have the pleasure of welcoming back Deekron, known as the Fitness DJ, is part of his AKA University of Michigan. So shout out to the 15-0 Wolverines, which I attended, my boy Ayal and DZ. And, you've got a really interesting, successful entrepreneurial route that you've taken. So maybe give our audience a little bit of the background on that, and then I'll ping you with questions on the book and the takeaways there, as well as, a holistic approach to getting people to live the lives that they should be living.
Awesome, Pete. Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to sharing a bit about my story, providing some value to your audience. You can say that I'm somebody who's had a lot of different career iterations. I would say the undertone in my life has always been fitness and wellness, partly because of my dad, who was a professional athlete. He was a professional rugby player in Romania, which is where I was born. And from a young age, he really instilled the importance of exercise and eating well and education. He said, these things are not optional. A quick funny story about my dad. He would actually come in on Saturday mornings when my brother and I would be sleeping. It would be like 7 a.m. He'd rip open the blinds. There'd be all kinds of sun pouring in. My brother and I'd be startled like, Dad, what's going on right now? And he'd be like, okay, boys, get dressed, get your sneakers on. We're going to go to the park and we're going to exercise. And we were like, no way. We started protesting. Dad, it's too early for this. We don't want to go. And he'd be like, nope, you got to get going. And we'd protest and be like, Dad, Saturday morning cartoons and all our friends get to watch and we don't get to watch, but he just wasn't having it. And so it was really that discipline. It was that instilling those, I guess, ways of thinking and prioritizing health, wellness, education. So these things are not optimal. You do them whether you like it or not. And so following that philosophy throughout my life paid a lot of benefits. It helped me feel better, helped me look better, helped me just handle everything better. And so wanting to contribute that to others is what led me to what I'm doing now. And so, yes, I've had the corporate background. I was in accounting after undergrad. I got my MBA at Michigan. I was doing management consulting, but I always had this passion to help people. And my brother was also a musician and DJ. So at the time I was working out to his music tracks, his techno mixes, and they were very motivating. And I said, I wonder if I could do something more with this. And that's when I took what he was doing and we were doing with the label. And I said, I wonder if we could use this in a fitness setting. And that's when I met David. I was promoting basically this record label that was customizing music for fitness classes to give people motivation. And it was my first foray into the health industry. So I was never a personal trainer per se. I didn't have the background of coach, personal training people or leading group fitness classes. It wasn't my thing, but I was kind of creating this content for them. I was creating these music mixes to use in classes. And from there, I took it into a podcast for consumers called Motion Tracks. We grew it to over 100,000 monthly listeners. Once we hit about 1 million downloads of our content of these like specially customized running music mixes, we took it to sponsors. We worked with some of the top sponsors in the space, Gatorade, Power Bar, Asics, Secret Deodorant. We did a bunch of cool stuff during the time. We launched an app. Apple featured our app for over a year. We got national media coverage for the app itself. And that was a good run. We had a good run for a few years. And then back in 2018, I was like, okay, things are slowing down here with the app. There were some competitors who had entered the space. They were kind of better funded than we were. And so at the point, I was like, okay, I want to pivot into something else. And I had this big email list of people who had downloaded my app. And I didn't know what to do with it. But I said, hey, I've been into fitness and wellness my whole life. Maybe I could help you get in shape. I could coach you. And so I got 6 clients right away from kind of like that first outreach. And so the rest is history. So since then, the last 5 years, I've been just getting more clients, changing how I think about helping people. And to the point where today I've got this holistic approach where I help people make long-term lasting changes in their body, in their health by starting with their mind. And so that's really where I'm today. And that's what my book is about.
So give us a little background on, the 9 shifts, right? And why isn't there 10? We did a book with 52 takeaways. How'd you kind of hover around that number and what's the most impactful? Maybe just give us a little, preview here.
Sure. So the 9 shift is sort of the second attempt at writing the book. The first attempt didn't go so well. It was missing a little bit of congruency. So there were like 10 challenges people face, and there was like a 4-step system and 8 habits they had to follow, and it wasn't quite coming together. So when I scrapped the first version of the book, I started working with my editor, and both her and I were familiar with this whole like 3x3 framework that a number of other coaches were using. And I had never thought to try to use it for myself. But when I started playing with it, it actually made everything come together nicely. And so the 9 shifts are actually grouped into 3 categories. So I look at it as 9 total challenges that get in the way of somebody over 40 who wants to elevate their mind, their body, and their life. And so it's 3 categories: mind, body, and life. And under these 3 categories, you have 3 challenges each. So 3 challenges under mind. So how does the mind get in the way of having the body and the life we want? So there's emotional eating, there's limiting beliefs, and there's wavering motivation. So these are 3 ways the mind could get in the way. The body itself gets in the way of our body goals because of a slowing metabolism, changing hormones, or injuries, limitations that we accumulate over time. And then the 3rd category, life. How does our life get in the way of having the body we want? Well, it's stress, limited time, or having to travel or attend social events. These things can all throw us off. Temptations, eating poorly on the road, etc. So the way we grouped it, the framework started making a lot of sense, and it sort of encapsulated most of the challenges that I saw my clients coming to me with.
So somebody gets the book, they do this on like a self-help type of concept. You also have, coaches that you envision, training or certifying in the 9 shifts, or is that something that you do and you kind of scale that, through technology and people, interacting with you directly? How do you think about technology? It seems to me, and Dave gave me a little background, like you're about a relationship. You're about like, personalizing a motivation, articulating it the way you want to articulate it. So how do you think about scaling the business? Or, some people say, I want to scale the business to X. It's like, why don't you scale the business to like 10 minus, less than 10, take X divided by 20. You can affect a lot of people.
Yes.
It doesn't need to be, an empire here. I'm going to affect this, and they're going to basically waterfall that down. Because that's all they talk about. When you lose weight and you got your shit together, people come up to you and say, how'd you do it? Right. Uh-huh. It's word of mouth. So how do you think about scaling, and how do you kind of manage your own success or milestones?
Yeah, it's a great question and something I think about pretty often. So for now, Pete, again, because I didn't come from, in a way, I kind of backed into the industry. So, I'm a corporate guy. I didn't have the fitness background, but I sort of started putting the pieces together. And, because my system is sort of self-created, it's also unique. Yes, I do have assistant coaches that work under me who handle more like the accountability, the check-ins, the ongoing stuff. And then I work with the bigger challenges with clients. So it's kind of like their limiting beliefs, their identity, their fixed patterns, stuff that makes them feel upset and then reach for that bottle of wine, 2, 3 times a week. It's that stuff that I am skilled in because I've had a lot of mindset training. So I work with people more intimately. To our maximum level of client load, we've handled between like 20 to 30 clients at a time. How do I think about scaling? I think part of it is one reason why I wrote the book is to just be able to get the message out more easily. I plan on doing more public speaking. I plan on doing more cool podcasts like this one. So I want people to start becoming more aware of this more holistic, comprehensive approach to solving this problem and not just diet and exercise. And I think over time, what I want to do is I want to make the mindset the foundation and make the body one outcome. And you may want that, or maybe a better career is another outcome, or maybe a better marriage is another outcome. So it's the elevating your mindset is the underlying theme, and then we can add more programs. And I would bring in specialists in career or in marriage counseling, all that, but it would still be part of this holistic way to elevate people overall.
So we've been getting involved with some of these GLP weight loss drugs, talking to a lot of groups that have different slants on it. And now you're finding out that, hey, this isn't necessarily just for weight loss and for reducing your risk of diabetes. It's actually, smoking cessation. It's actually, a friend of mine who used to order pizza down at Emory at 1:55 a.m. before Domino's closed. He said to me after being on Ozempic for like 6 months, he's like, Pete, I actually have to remind myself to eat. The fact that came out of his mouth, if you met him, that was like a shocker. That was like a tell for me. So do you view technology and some of these pharmaceutical drugs as basically maybe an on-ramp into the 9 shifts, and maybe it doesn't all need to be natural? If you're on there, that's great. And if it has those impacts, I'm actually going to deal with the side effects, which is your body,
Yeah.
reducing muscle density, and your life's going to be much better because you could actually shop at a regular store instead of the big and tall or the husky section of Sears, which I used to have to do at age 12, which was very damaging
Wow.
to me. So, how do you view technology and drugs as part of the solution here, which probably has only been the last like 12 to 18 months, and people really
Yeah.
onboarding this in a mass market way?
Yeah, and I've had a couple of clients go on it. Yeah, I think it's personal preference ultimately. I think some people are okay with that. I think some people maybe have tried a lot of things and they're frustrated. And the promise of, hey, just take an injection. It seems simple. Anything that's simple, the human mind is going to gravitate towards. The human mind in general, because of our comfort zone, it's going to cause resistance. We don't like to work. We don't like to exert ourselves. We don't like to spend a lot of time, take risks, etc. Unfortunately, those things are required for true growth. And if you do the injection, okay, potentially it's going to help you lose weight in what I would consider more of a forced way. So what you're doing is you're slowing down the digestion of food. You're also kind of forcing the body to digest food slower with these GLP-1 agonists. And it unfortunately, I think over time, they may find that there are side effects. There aren't any long-term studies on how well these things work for humans or what the side effects might be, 10 years out. And there's already some people indicating whether it's been thyroid issues, digestion issues. I myself have suffered from digestion issues, and I know how important it is to have proper digestion. And if these things are slowing down digestion, we may end up seeing more people with gut dysbiosis, more people with issues in their gut health, and that will disrupt everything else, unfortunately. So, remains to be seen. But I've always been, again, because of my dad's discipline and the mental strength he instilled in us, I will always go for what may be harder but better for me in the long run versus what's a shortcut but may cost me in the long run, if that makes sense.
When you look at people making behavioral changes, and we had a woman who wrote a book, basically just like simple things, like do this, don't do that. Take a walk, don't take a nap. Eat this fruit, don't eat this, peanut M&Ms. What do you think are some of the biggest inhibitants or drivers? And I'll just give you an example of one. Like I'll go into, I'm on an airplane like 150 days a year. I'll go into Hudson News and I'll have like a healthy snack area. Okay. But you flip over one of those, it's like 10 serving sizes, which people think is like one. The sugar content's like 12, but then you got to multiply that by 10. So you get 120 grams of sugar, and you think you're basically taking care of yourself. So it's almost like mass deception of like a healthy snack or a healthy meal. What are some of the things that, and it's probably not going to be like policy or politics or, like the FDA coming down. It's got to be education. So what are some of the things that you see people doing? It's like, how do you not know this?
Yeah. There's some very basic things like that. I think sometimes they'll just eat late. People will have snacks after dinner and they'll just be craving stuff. And, they wonder why that's happening. When you look at what they did during the day, they didn't even stop to eat very much, and they finally stop and the stress comes down. Now cortisol drops and the body is like, oh, wait a second, I'm hungry. Because when we're stressed, cortisol is up, we're in fight or flight mode, the appetite gets suppressed. And so a lot of people, they just run around all day. And then at the end of the day, they haven't eaten anything. And now they're just gorging, which is not healthy, right? Again, it comes down to the digestive system. You don't want to overload the system before bed. That's a common mistake. I think, I work with a lot of high achievers. They're perfectionists and they're very all in or all out. So if they can't get that perfect 60-minute sweat dripping workout in, they'll do nothing. They'll be like, oh, I'll just wait till this deadline season is over and then I'll just get back in my groove. And that's a mistake. So going back to the tips, can you do at least a minimal amount? Can you do what's better instead of just perfect? And so I call it taking imperfect actions. It's going for that walk when you can't get that full workout. And it's having, more awareness of what you're eating versus just grabbing whatever's there because you don't have time.
Gotcha. Rewinding a bit to something you said before that I wrote down, you've got 20 to 30 clients right now, or at a certain specific time. Do people graduate from this and you kind of refill, or do people kind of say, look, I get it, but I still want to make sure like I've got connectivity to you. And then you can say, hey, my business model is set up to help as many people. So I must have to like put you through a cohort and then have you go on your own and, go into the wilderness and tell people you're practicing this. So how do you think about that from a business standpoint and also just from like a behavioral standpoint? Like, I actually don't want you to be a client for more than like X number of months because then I may not be educating you on how to do this. Like you don't need me forever. How do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's very case by case. Some people struggle more with nutrition. Some people struggle more with their exercise, struggle more with their mindset. So everybody's going to have a different journey and a different timeline. But yes, it gets to a point where, like you're saying, I don't want to work with people more than a certain amount of time because then we're just rehashing stuff and you're not getting it. And you're preventing me from helping other people. And so there's this fine line between giving people the basics, giving them the nudge they need, and then after maybe 6 to 9 months saying, okay, enough's enough. This should be enough time to learn the habits now. And if you want some light touch, ongoing accountability, connectivity with us, I do have an ongoing group coaching model where I do office hours and people check in and we still send them their accountability forms and they kind of keep us posted on how they're doing. But they've learned enough about the principles that they could just practice them now with just a little bit of accountability to keep going.
That's great. One of the things that we harp on a lot of bricks and mortar brands and businesses is to say, you're giving your product away. You charge in $99 for unlimited, to something that is probably the second or third most important thing in someone's life. And it definitely is the most impactful for their longevity, for their attitude, for, the confidence that they feel. So how do you go into a situation and say, look, this is worth probably, depending on how much you make, right, and earn, my ability to make you an overachiever or to exceed your own expectations is worth thousands of dollars a month, right? I don't know if I can charge that. I don't know if I have the guts to charge that to you. And I don't know if you're going to see, what the analogy is that I can say, well, this is, how much do you spend on a mattress? Or, you bought yourself a Rolex. I mean, what I'm doing for you is way more than the Rolex purchase. So how do you think about that when you say, I changed your life, right? Everything about it is positive now. What percentage of that do I get? Not just you, but I'm saying it, our businesses in general. I want people who are listening to this to think about what's my price to value and what percentage of that upside do I get for doing that for you?
Yeah. It's a really great point. It's like what we do for folks is priceless.
Right.
It's like I work with my client, Johnny, who's, he's a pilot, does well, and he's going through a divorce, and me helping him and his wife come to the table and not lawyer up. Who knows how much that has saved, right? Or, somebody who was diabetic, it was pre-diabetic, and I helped them not be diabetic anymore and lose the weight and get healthy again. What is that worth to them? Salesperson who could sell more because now they're more confident in how they look. There's all kinds of money that could be generated because of that. So I think it's a balance between, how much do I put in terms of my time? Because that's obviously a scarce resource. What is their ability to pay? And sort of like the more they can pay, the more we can provide. Because when it comes to optimizing your mind and your health and your nutrition and your sleep and all these factors, we can really take it to high levels. I've got anti-aging doctors on my staff who could step in and help people with longevity. Like there's a lot we can do. I think about the story that Tony Robbins tells that he had some kind of really successful hedge fund manager who wanted Tony to coach him one-on-one. And Tony charged him $1 million a year for that, right? Because he has the ability to pay and there's so much value in it. So I think it's case by case. So for me, it's like, how do I scale it, create more content, create a course that people can follow so I'm not as actively involved, but they still get the benefit. They pay less, whereas somebody wants a higher level of service and support, customization, optimization, really high level, then, they would pay commensurate to that.
And how much of this, the interaction with a client, do you want to rely on having a conversation, building a relationship, or saying, look, I need you to get an Oura Ring. I need you to have an Apple Watch, and I want to download all your data, and I'm basically going to be like your data human scientist. Mm-hmm. Versus, maybe some people don't want to share that with you because, they might trip up and they don't want to disappoint you. Hey, I see your heart rate went up at, 2:00 in the morning. Obviously, you didn't get a good night's sleep last night, or, it seems like you're there's got to be some M&Ms in here somewhere, or Oreo Thins, which you eat by the sleeve, not by the cookie. I just had that experience. Or trail mix, which, you think is good for you until you read the back label. So how much of it do you want to rely on someone's honesty of their progression? And how much do you want to rely on, hey, look, just give me all the data and let me really see what's going on with you. I'm not going to ask you questions maybe you don't want to answer.
Yeah. I think data is great. I think it could really help us track things better, get a better sense of what's happening with the person. I have clients who are more data inclined, and they'll track all their food. They'll give us their Oura Ring data. They'll give us their Apple Watch data, and that's good. And we can guide them more clearly and understand patterns more quickly. But not everyone's going to do that. To your point, I mean, some people just don't want to do it. They don't have time to do it. They're not tech savvy. It's just not for them. The good news is, optimizing with data is only 20% of the battle. 80% of the battle are the key habits around what I call food, fitness, stress, and sleep. These things are in our control. They don't require devices. Just keep us a little posted on what you're doing. And as long as they're doing, really handling those 4 areas well, they should see benefits in their metabolism, in their stress levels, in everything that they're looking to achieve, body fat, etc.
On your LinkedIn, you've got a lot of content related to your book signings, to your, speaking events. I feel like the next iteration of fitness studios and health clubs and large sports complexes, people like you should be going in there, and saying hey, why am I going to a bookstore? Why don't I go into a health club? You got a 3,000 square foot studio. It's got nice hardwood floors. You got a microphone. You got a sound system. Let me just come in there and basically provide this to your members. We'll do a book signing there. You guys buy the book at cost, and I'll get business out of this. But now I'm basically guaranteeing you that there's going to be 10 people in the room that are going to shake their head and they're going to say, hey, I'm going to commit to my membership at this location because they exposed you to it. They're like the lead generator to their success, and they don't have people like you that they can afford to have on staff. So have you bumped into any walls? Has anyone asked you and said, hey, come speak at my club or come speak at my pickleball event or come, that's where they are, right? And I feel like there's a disconnect right now between content and motivation and the actual physical plant of where that's happening.
Yeah, that's interesting you said that, Pete, because I actually did come across a gentleman who owns 2 gym locations here, higher end gym locations. They're sort of like a CrossFit, but more a little bit more holistic in their approach. And the owner, William, found out about my book, and he wants me to come in and speak to his folks, to his members, his classes. So yeah, that's definitely an avenue. I haven't fully explored it yet, but definite possibilities there.
Yeah, I feel like there needs to be agents that focus on, this is how we're releasing the book. We're going to go hit 3,000 studios with an RV and,
Yeah, eventually that's the kind of marketing that we'll get to.
Yeah. So food, fitness, stress, sleep, what other advice as we close out here, either a quote or, that building this is not going to be, overnight, on CNBC or something, but look, I'm doing the right thing. I'm on the right path. You've got experience that, is unmatched from a corporate standpoint, understanding the numbers, understanding how to do marketing, understand what big brands want, understanding how to, basically pressurize, communities and population. So how do you think about your own path, or is there a quote that you'd give or advice to your younger self?
Yeah, pretty good thing to think about. I would say, what, Pete, one thing I've really benefited from even more, I would say, than my business school experience was the personal development work that I did to understand how I'm wired, to understand my emotions, my thoughts, my feelings, where are they coming from, and how do I shift them so that I could get out of things that other people struggle with, like self-doubt, imposter syndrome, limiting beliefs, self-criticism, shame, all these things that we go through as human beings. There's not enough emphasis on understanding that and gaining emotional intelligence. And it's ironic because we all want to get better. We all want to achieve our goals, but that can't happen without behavior change. And behavior change is not logical. You can't tell a smoker, stop smoking, it's not good for you, and have them stop, because they won't. It's not a logical thing they're doing. So behavior change comes from our emotions. So the more we can become emotionally intelligent, the better we will feel inside. Our self-worth goes up, our confidence goes up, our ability to be consistent and say no to the bad stuff and the bad habits also goes up. So to me, change comes at an emotional level. And that's why my book is called The Mind First Method to Transform Your Body and Your Life. You have to start with the mind first and get deep to understand yourself.
Awesome. Hey, man, we love what you're doing. Glad we reconnected. Congrats on the book. We put one together. We know that's not easy. At the end, I just wanted to get it out there and said, I've looked at this enough times. It's as good as it's going to get.
Yep,
And,
exactly.
I got to get it out to the world. But let's definitely connect about trying to, put some of these partnerships or awareness together of these groups of people that are kind of like entering their journey, but don't really get the direction because these places are not staffed to actually, have the motivation or have the quantum leaps that, they could get from a partnership with you, or just, go and speak there for an hour.
Yeah, I would love it.
It's really just a trigger.